Hello, welcome to today's live stream lawyer show. I'm Judy, the YouTube lawyer here from North Carolina, and today our special guest is going to be Dr. Severine Bryan. And so I have been practicing divorce law and family law as well as civil litigation for over 20 years now. And definitely divorce cases have become gradually more and more of a greater percentage of my practice. And there are definitely a lot of financial issues that have to do with divorces and a lot of financial problems that people tend to face at around the time that they get divorced as well as afterwards. So that's why Dr. Severine Bryan is here to share her special financial experience. And I would like to tell you guys a little bit about her first. Dr. Severine Bryan, Ph.D., is a personal finance educator and coach who's passionate about helping women over 40 live a financially abundant life. Her goal is for women to find financial freedom and build wealth. She's a member of the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education, and she's currently pursuing the Accredited Financial Counselor certification to elevate the services she provides to her clients. And she also has her own YouTube channel by the same name. So definitely please take a look at her YouTube channel if you're not subscribed already. So I'd like to add Dr. Sev to the stream now. Hi, Dr. Sev. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for having me, Judy.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for being a guest today. And you just had your live stream, which ended a couple of hours ago, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So
Doing
Dr.
double duty today.
Yeah. Very busy and everything. So can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you wound up becoming a financial coach?
Well, I've always had an affinity for numbers, and somehow I always find myself in a position where I'm teaching, and it always involved numbers. I was in college and high school. I was always tutoring math, algebra, calculus, just always around numbers. And as I got older, I was at my church and they asked me to be the stewardship director and teach personal finance because I just always have been able to handle my money right. And so I started doing that. I was teaching personal finance for about 15 years at my church. And then I thought, you know what, I could actually do something with this rather than just, teaching here and there. And so I started looking into certifications and started really studying in a formal way. And once I started doing that, I got asked to speak at different places. And as I get older, I'm thinking I need to make this into a business. And so I formed my business, Bryan Financial Empowerment LLC, and I am actually taking another certification, this one, the Accredited Financial Counselor certification, where I'm more than just giving educational things like teaching you how to budget. I'm also speaking to your emotions. I'm speaking to your approach, your overall approach to your finances. So it's more than just the mechanics of personal finance. It's also the emotional side of personal finance. So this certification I'm pursuing is going to help me to do that. So it's kind of evolved over the years where I was just doing it because it just was a natural thing. And then I started becoming more serious and pursuing different certifications to help me better serve my clients.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And did you grow up wealthy and knowing a lot about finance from your parents?
Well, I didn't grow up wealthy. My dad actually, I would say we were middle class. I grew up in Jamaica, and my dad had 9 kids. And when he died, he left a house for my one brother. He left a house for the oldest sister. He left another house for the next three, and then a house for me and my other two sisters, and the youngest one got land. So he always managed his money. He always took care of finances. He actually put me in his bank account when I was 15 years old.
Oh.
So because I guess he saw that, financial inclination, but he put me in his account, even though I was way down in the middle of the line in kids. But we grew up, I would want to say more middle class.
Mhm.
maybe middle lower class. He had a profession. He worked with the Ministry of Agriculture. He had lots of land. He had lots of cows and other things like that. So we always had things, but I did not. We were not taught how to manage money. None of what he did. He didn't share what he did or how he got what he got. He just did it, and so by osmosis, I guess, I learned the importance of, following, leaving things for your kids. But he never really took an active role in teaching us about money.
Hmm. And what did your mother do for a living?
My mom, actually, my mom and my dad were separated when I think I was about 7 years old. And she came here to this country. Well, she came to the Bahamas first.
Mhm.
And she moved from the Bahamas to the US. And let me preface this by saying both my mom and my dad only had I guess the equivalent of um maybe beginning high school education because of
Mhm.
the way things are structured in Jamaica.
Uh-huh.
So they were not very educated. But my mom, when she came here, she cleaned hotels, cleaned offices. Those are the kinds of things she did, and she was able to buy two houses. She was able to
Wow.
buy her car cash. So the work ethic that I have, I guess I got it honestly from both parents. But she, without a college education or anything like that, she was able to amass quite a bit. I mean, when she retired, she had a nice, healthy nest egg. As
Mhm.
her kids, we still give her money every month, just to kind of help her out. But she has no expenses. Her house is paid off. She doesn't drive anymore, but everything is paid off. The only thing she has to worry about is insurance on her house,
Oh,
and that's it. And paying her life insurance.
wow. That's an
Yeah.
amazing story, to be a housekeeper and yet be able to succeed and build that kind of wealth. That's
Yes,
amazing.
yeah, my mom and dad, they are both the hardest working people I know. I mean,
Mhm.
very hard worker. My mom, when she first came, from what I understand, because I didn't come over until later, but when she first came here, she would work during the day to clean, the hotel, and at night she would clean offices. So she was doing two things, two jobs, and she would do that. She did that for a while until finally she just got the office job as a regular job. But yeah, my mom and dad, they're just really, really hard workers. They're not. We didn't grow up in luxury, but we had what we needed.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And then did you go to college in the United States?
Yes, I when I came here, actually, the way the educational system is set up in Jamaica, you can take what's called Cambridge O levels and A levels. That's just the English system. And once you've taken a number of O levels and you've passed with a good grade, you're graded A, B's, and C's. Once you pass with a good grade, you can go right into in the corporate world. And I passed the exams, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to the Bahamas. I had an aunt there, and I stayed for about a year, and then I came back to Jamaica, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And my though I got the newspaper, and I just kind of looked in there and said, let me see what kind of jobs I could apply for. And I got a job working at a florist at a flower shop. I had no clue how to make flowers or anything, but they
Wow.
hired me. They
Uh-huh.
hired me. I don't even remember how much I was making,
Mhm.
but that was providential because the but a few months after I was there, the lady who did the accounts, she got sick. And the owner knew that I had passed, one of the subjects that I passed was accounting. And so she asked me to take over the office. And that's what I started doing. And that's when I found my love of accounting and numbers. And when I came up here, I thought, okay, I could transfer those subjects that I had taken and passed. I could transfer it here. But I found that I first went to a technical college and I realized that's not how the system works here. And then I went to a community college and then I realized that's not how it works either. So I transferred to a 4 year college. So I actually went back to school in my 20s to get my degree, my accounting degree. So yeah, long way, but I went to school. I went to got my degree, my college degrees here in the US.
Wow, that's amazing. So, were you in Georgia when you went to community college and college?
No, I actually started. I was in Florida. My mom
Oh,
is still in Orlando. So when I
oh,
came here, I went to Orlando, and I went to Florida, Florida A&M University.
mhm.
When I went to the community college, I got a scholarship because again, after having done all the subjects in Jamaica, I knew this stuff. So I blew through the classes, and one of my friends said, "You need to apply for scholarships." I had no idea because again, I had just come here. I didn't know the system. I didn't know how anything worked, and I applied for a scholarship on what they call a two by two or something like that, where you they pay for 2 years at community college and 2 years at a 4-year degree, and that's what I did. So I went to Florida A&M in Tallahassee, Florida,
Mhm.
and then I was recruited from right off of college by International Paper. Went to the workplace and moved to Moss Point, Mississippi. Actually
Oh,
lived in Mobile, Alabama, while I worked
oh,
in Moss Point, Mississippi. And it was just right across the bridge. And then
mhm.
they bought a factory in Augusta, Georgia, and wanted me to go over there and help with the accounting over there. So I went to Augusta, Georgia, loved it, loved Augusta, Georgia, bought my
Mhm.
first house in Augusta, Georgia.
Oh,
And then after a while, I wanted to do my master's, but they didn't have a lot of opportunities in Augusta at the time. So I moved to a job in Conyers, Georgia, working with
oh.
Lithonia Lighting.
Oh
And
my gosh. I lived in Conyers when I was in fourth grade on
oh, you did? Yeah, I
Honey
worked with
Creek Road, Honey Creek Elementary. That's where I went for fourth grade.
yeah,
How funny.
I don't know if I remember that because that was in 20, what is it? 2018, I think 2018, 2019, somewhere
Oh,
around
that's
there.
pretty recent. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I was
and then
there in the 80s.
yeah, yeah, and then I was there for a while, and I was supposed to be promoted, but the lady I reported to, there was an issue, and they pulled back the promotion, and I was like, I don't need to stay here. I have opportunities, and I actually was recruited. I didn't even look for the job for both times. For Lithonia Lighting, I was recruited, and where I ended up with Lucent Technologies that had just broken off from AT&T and formed their own company. And I was recruited, and they when they told me the salary, I was like, okay, that sounds good. And so I started working at Lucent Technologies in Alpharetta, Georgia, and we were bought by Alcatel. We became Alcatel Lucent, and then Nokia bought us. And so I was there for 19 years. I was
Wow.
between those three companies. I was there for 19 years. 19 years too long, but it's another story.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear your whole career story because I didn't even really know all this stuff about you. So thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Oh, no problem. And in August of 2019, I
Uh-huh.
was recruited by another company where I'm with now, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I was there for a while. And then, of course, with COVID, I came back to Atlanta because I can work from here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Atlanta's definitely a very different place, from when I grew up there in the early 80s and 90s and stuff. Yeah. But since the topic of today has to do with divorce, I guess we both need to share a little bit about some bad parts of our lives, right? Because divorce is never a good thing. It's always stressful. And for many women, it usually means a decrease in the standard of living.
Yeah.
And so, when I got divorced, I mean, I hadn't really thought of this in quite a while, but yeah, I definitely remember feeling more stressed out financially because suddenly I was responsible for paying for all of my own living expenses. In the past, my ex-husband had paid for our mortgage because, he made a lot more than I did. So basically, whatever I made, even though it wasn't a lot, I was able to just like invest it or save it, or, I didn't really have to worry about my spending or anything. But
Hmm.
then I ended up moving into an apartment, and that took a big chunk of my money. And then having to get my own health insurance was definitely an eye opener because he used to provide health insurance for the both of us. And so, luckily through Obamacare, I was able to get like one of those silver level health insurance policies, but
Hmm.
it was still, I don't know, it wasn't a very good health insurance policy, and it was still costing me something like $400 a month or 300 something a month, and I couldn't even see the regular doctors that I wanted to see. So so everything kind of went a little downhill. I mean, not totally downhill, but definitely, I felt it financially, having to worry every month, like, okay, I got to pay this rent, and now I have to pay all the utilities on my own, pay for, health insurance. And so, I was definitely counting the dollars and pennies a lot more after I got divorced compared to before. So, what about you? Like, was it tough for you?
Well, I was everybody was on my insurance. and and I was the one who was actually, he had no clue how much the mortgage was. I was
Oh,
the one,
okay.
I was the one who did all of that. So it wasn't as bad a transition. What it was is that, because, well, I had owned my own house when I met him, and I had actually had two vehicles. So I sold the house, and then we bought a house together in 2003. But he didn't have really good credit, and because he lived with family, he never really lived on his own, so he didn't know really about finances on any of that. So I already, having owned a house, bought cars, do all that stuff, I already knew that. So the problem for me came in where I added his name to the deed on the house, because I said, that will help you to build credit.
Mm.
And when I did that, when it was time for the divorce, he would not move out of the house.
Oh.
And because he wouldn't move out of the house, even though the divorce decree said, you need to work with me to sell the house, and he would not move out. So I had to take him back to court. And by the time I did that, he was getting very belligerent and all that. So my lawyer and my pastor told me, you might want to move out just to be on the safe side. So I moved out, and for a time I was paying the mortgage and rent, and that kind of stretched me financially. And
Mhm.
then I had to get a lawyer because he got a lawyer. So, I filed. I said, well, these are all the things I brought into the marriage, so I'm going to keep those. The things we bought together, you can have that. But that was not sufficient, because he had people talking it to him, telling, all the things that he could get.
Mhm.
and and so that was what caused me to get into a financial bind, because ended up walking away from the house, and then me having to hire a lawyer, put me in having to pay all these fees that were not part of my plan. That's what pushed me in a financial bind. So I guess I was in a better place because I was already handling all of that.
Mhm.
Um, but the additional expenses that I had to take on because of the divorce is what kind of pushed me in a financial bind.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely always, financially draining if both parties end up hiring attorneys and they can't come to any agreement, and they're just like
Mhm.
fighting over everything. And then, the situation where you had where the husband wouldn't move out of the house, I've seen that happen so many times also, and it can get really ugly and antagonistic. And definitely you don't want to get into any sort of domestic violence situation or anything like that.
Yeah,
So sometimes it is better to just go ahead and have one person just move out, even though they don't really want to, or even
yeah.
though they're the ones that ultimately want to keep the house, you know?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
what happened is I ended up refinancing the house in my name, just my name, because his name was on the title, but refinancing just as a way, because he wasn't working at the time. And so it was a way for me to be able to manage the finances on my own. So I was on the hook for the finances. So he didn't care if the house went into foreclosure or what,
Mhm.
because, and I was so thankful, because I work with a mortgage company that allowed me to do what's called a deed in lieu. And I basically just gave them the keys. And no, not the only impact to my credit was that I had missed payments. So that was a good part of having a good mortgage company that I was able to work with.
I see. Yeah. Well, we'll just let's see. Some people have asked some questions, so we'll just flash this one up here. Hi, Liz. Thank you for being here. Prenups and postnups. I heard couples with these agreements tend to have shorter marriages. What are some other ways to protect your money when married? Well, yeah, I would say it's not that the prenup or the postnup might cause people to split up, but definitely the people that are more likely to get those kinds of agreements probably are already on their second or third or fourth marriages. So that's when, it definitely is more advisable to be sure to have a prenup if you've already been through the ringer before with a bad divorce. It definitely makes sense, especially if both parties have their own jobs or they might have kids from previous relationships. Then that's when it kind of does make sense more. I mean, it's definitely going to make your life easier to have a prenup if you end up getting divorced, because the prenup already decides, what where the assets are going. Usually it would typically say that each person keeps whatever assets are titled in his or her own name, or, whatever debts the person incurs in their own name are going to stay that person's. And then sometimes the prenups also say that there's not going to be any alimony or post-separation support. So again, those kinds of prenups would definitely help simplify the issue, so you don't wind up going to court fighting over alimony or fighting over equitable distribution, which is dividing up the financial stuff, if your prenup already addressed it. And then as for postnups, just based on my experience, most of the time people get postnups because they already start seeing some bad signs, and then they're doubting whether their marriage is going to last. And that's why they decide, okay, well, if we're going to stay together, then, we need a postnup, so that already kind of foreshadows some more likelihood that the marriage is not going to work out, but postnups really aren't as popular, based on what I've seen, as prenups, though. It seems like more and more people do want prenups these days. And ways to protect your money when you're married. Well, I don't know what the law is in other states. So of course the disclaimer is I'm only licensed in North Carolina, and this is not really legal advice or whatever. But in general, at least in North Carolina, if you inherit something, then that money or asset that you inherit is still going to be yours, even if you don't have a prenup. So let's say you inherit like a big chunk of money. The safe thing to do would be to keep that money that you inherited in your own account that's not a joint account. That way it's more clear that you didn't commingle the funds into any sort of like marital account, or definitely you wouldn't want to take your inheritance money and use it to buy a jointly titled home with your spouse if you intend to keep that inheritance separate. So, but then again, everybody's relationship is different. And sometimes the other spouse will get mad. They'll be like, hey, you inherited all that money from your mom, so why don't you help use it to pay down our mortgage? Or why don't you use it to help me buy a new car? Or why don't you use it to help pay off our joint credit card debt? So there's just like so many different scenarios. So you just kind of have to see, what is your relationship like with your spouse, and, how much do you want to contribute to the marital pot to appease the other person and make sure your marriage is happy, versus saying that, hey, all this inheritance money is mine, you ain't touching it. So, yeah. So
some ways that you can really protect your money before you get married. There's a song, What's Love Got to Do with It? We have to be, no matter how much you're in love, you have to really think about your finances. Go ahead and do a background check.
Yes,
and run credit reports on this person. And it's not because you don't love the person, but you have to protect yourself and you have to protect your kids. You go ahead and do the background check, go ahead and do the credit reports. And if you find that this person is someone who's had issues with money, it's not that you can't marry them, but you got to put protections in place. Because one of the things you can do now is you can say, okay, you making X dollars, I'm making X dollars. This is what it costs to run a household. So we're going to put this money in the pot for the house. Then you can take this amount and do what you want with it. I'm going to use this and do what I want with it. Because that way you don't have everything into one pot. He ends up, or she ends up, pulling out all the money to do whatever they want to do. Then you're trying to scramble to pay the mortgage, to pay all the other bills, because that's what happened to me. So you want to, if you see that that is a problem, a potential problem, then you want to go ahead and set up something like that. Set up a way, even for assets that come into your marriage before you get married. How do you want to handle those assets? If you were to break up, how do you want to handle those assets? And it's not that you're planning to break up, but the reality is it happens. So you have to make sure that you're protecting your financial position, and then think about your kids, because it's not just you and that person. You have kids to think about. You want to leave something for your kids, and you may have somebody who is not very thoughtful when it comes to money. It's all about them. So if you see those red flags, it's not that you won't end up married to that person, but what are the things that you can do to protect yourself in the event this person's bad habits continue through marriage all the way? Then how can I protect myself?
Exactly. And that's where you probably need a prenup if you're already seeing red flags, because, I've definitely done prenups where somebody already kind of saw some issues like, oh, this guy has no money and I have, 10 times more assets and he's just got a lot of credit card debts. And I'm like, well, do you really want to marry somebody like that? Okay. Get that prenup,
Yeah.
because, normally, once again, in North Carolina, I don't know what it's like in other states, but whatever you guys accumulate during the marriage, from the date of marriage up until the date of separation, normally that whole marital estate as well as the marital debts typically get split 50-50. I mean, unless you can pinpoint it and say that, hey, this guy committed marital waste because he was like charging up his credit cards at the strip club, or, he squandered away the money on his cocaine habit, or, it's just, it's just devastating for some people who might be scrimping and saving, but yet their spouse, just kept charging and charging and, taking out a home equity line of credit, opens up joint credit card accounts that the other person doesn't know about. It can become a financial mess. So if you're already seeing red flags with somebody while you're just dating or engaged, then, I really would caution people about, actually marrying somebody like that without a prenuptial agreement.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and definitely I agree with what Dr. Sev said about asking for a credit report, because sometimes people don't even know that they have like some like random debt out there that they forgot about, that there was a judgment against them from like 10, 15 years ago that they forgot about because they moved away and didn't know about the lawsuit against them or something.
Yeah, and then you may end up filing your tax returns and you don't get that money
Yes.
because if you don't file the form that will say, hey, I'm not responsible for his debt or I'm not responsible for her debt, then that money, the IRS will pull your money.
Yes.
And so these are the kinds of things that you have to think about. Because as I said before, what love got to do with it?
Yeah.
You have to think, unfortunately, because not everybody is completely honest in their relationship dealing. So you have to really think about all these other things. And that's why it's good to get a personal finance coach or and a lawyer involved to kind of look at the nuances of the relationship. Because again, yes, you're in love, but you have to do the practical things. Because we tend to, when we're in love, we live in la la land, and we don't, oh, he won't do that. She won't do that. You've
Yeah,
got to do
wait
the
like 5
practical
to 10
things.
years later when the love and the lust have worn off, and then you see this person that's squandering away all your marital assets,
Yeah, and
or
that's
lies
gonna
to
be
you.
that's painful. It's painful when you are working hard and you're doing everything you can to build up assets and to do all of that, and then somebody else will just, pull money out. Oh, I'm gonna send this to my mom. Well, you can't do that. The mortgage is due tomorrow. Well,
Mhm,
my mom needs it.
mhm.
What do you do when that's the attitude? So you have to make sure you protect the assets. And another red flag too is, how do they treat their parents and how do they treat your sisters if it's a guy, and if it's a woman, how does she talk about the male in her family? That is a red flag to say she's not going to respect you. She might say she might be in love with you, but she won't respect you, or he won't respect you, because they already don't value those kinds of relationship in their life.
Mhm.
So even though
Yeah.
it's not financial per se, but it possibly can lead to financial issues because they don't have that respect. And that was a red flag that I ignored.
Yes, exactly. And that's why you really need to see, if you're going to marry somebody, see what kind of relationship they have with their family or their parents.
Mhm.
Like, you got to discuss ahead of time, like, do you expect to be giving money to your parents? Because that
Mhm.
has also been an issue in some cases that I've dealt with where, somebody was constantly, transferring money to some parents, trying to hide money that way. Or, you just never know. Like, sometimes people might want to give money to some like relative or sibling of theirs that has financial problems. So you just kind of have to see, like, would you be in agreement with your future spouse, about giving money to the parents or some, like, deadbeat relative that is down on their luck and the other person wants to give money to them and stuff. So you want to see what kind of like family relations they have regarding finances, and what the expectations are in regards to helping other family members.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with helping, but you can't be, you're not in a marriage. It's two persons. So you can't make big financial decisions like that, or you shouldn't make big financial decisions like that on your own. I don't care who comes to you, even if it's your mom, come to you and ask for something, you should run that by your partner, because you're putting money together in a pot for your household. And then all of a sudden you decide you're going to take that money and, divert it outside. And there's nothing wrong with that, but have a discussion. Maybe the other person knows of a way that we could work the numbers and make that happen, but you didn't give them a chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't want to keep financial secrets from your spouse. Yeah. And Khalid is asking, he says he's young and from a small city. Is it rare that someone makes six figures a year?
No.
Well, I mean, it just totally depends. I mean, it's like the world is your oyster, right? In America, people can start from rags to riches, right? Although it's definitely helpful if you already come from a well-off family. But, I don't think it's that rare. But again, it just really depends, like what profession you choose and what, even within like the legal profession, there's a huge disparity in incomes depending on what kind of legal job you get. So just having a JD doesn't mean you're going to make great money, So
the key, Khaled, is negotiation. Everything is negotiable. Even if they say the job is paying $80,000, you can go in there and you can say, "Hey, here is why you need to pay me 90,000 or 100,000. These are the skills that I bring to the job that may not apply to this position right now, but it can help you in this. That's why it's good to know the company. It can apply to this, and this, and this in your company, because I see in your company you have this issue and that issue." And you negotiate and you say, "I'm coming in for this job, but this skill that I have can apply over here and here and here. And I can help you solve this problem." And you negotiate. No, anybody who tells you that they're bringing you for a job for a certain amount of money, don't just take that offer. You negotiate. What do you have that they want? And if they don't want it, hey, go to the next person. But I don't know if rare is the right word, but it is certainly doable. But again, you have to sell yourself, and you have to find a problem that the company has that you can solve, and negotiate that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even if you start out not making great money, you can always try to lateral, keep your options open, network, be willing to move, or be willing to get extra certifications or whatever you need so that you can move around. I mean, nobody's really loyal to an employer or a company anymore. People usually leave within just like 2 to 5 years and switch jobs all over the place throughout their career. So even if you start somewhere low, hopefully you'll have that advancement potential as you get older.
And check out the feds. Check out the feds. Go to US Gov. I think it's USAjobs.gov.
USA Govs, USAjobs.gov.
Yes, they have a lot of opportunities for young people. So check them out. And they start the salary scale pretty high.
Yeah, although usually it is very hard to just get that first job. They seem to always have like a preference for people that are already within the system or people they already know. So it can be really hard to get in.
There are resume classes that they offer, because their resume is more geared. It's not a list of what you've done. You have to really, you can have 16-page resume with the feds, whereas in corporate America, they don't want you to have maybe more one or 2 pages. So because the feds resume is very detailed. So look at that website, and there are classes where they teach you how to write resumes that target fed jobs. Go out there and do it, young man.
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, but you just need to be able to, get the right kind of credentials that you need to get those kinds of
Yeah.
higher paying jobs. I mean, clearly, if someone goes into, wanting to be a preschool teacher, then of course
Yeah.
you should already know that, okay, preschool teacher is not going to be making over $100,000 or maybe even $50,000. Yeah. So
Need
you
a
have to
side
pick the
job.
right career. Yeah. Yeah. So Kayak said he never heard of a postnup. Yeah, it's not very common, but I've definitely done some postnups over the years. And typically it's sort of like a prenup because people go ahead and determine, this is how we're going to split up the property and the debts if we were to divorce. But here in North Carolina, you can't cover things such as, child custody or child support in advance, though, in those kinds of agreements. Yeah. So Liz asks, do prenups protect your assets after marriage? Yes. Yeah. For instance, you get married and then buy a bunch of stocks in your name. Would the spouse be able to? No. I mean, assuming that the prenup says the typical boilerplate language, which is that whatever is titled only in one person's name is always going to remain that person's assets. So yeah, that's why people get prenups, because it basically changes the legal treatment of the marital assets so that, whatever you make or your earnings will never be anything that the other party can claim. Yeah. But then at the same time, if you do have a prenup, it should also address what happens to jointly titled things. Like if you guys later buy a jointly titled house or have a joint checking account just to pay bills and stuff, then typically the prenup would also address those things and say that it gets split 50-50, or, some people say it's based on whoever contributed, a certain percentage, but I think that gets a lot trickier to figure out. So normally it would just say that any jointly titled things would be sold and split 50-50. Yeah. But the answer to your question is yes, at least based on what I know as a North Carolina lawyer. So, and Kathy says, being from the Philippines, a lot of Filipino couples will stay together regardless of infidelities to keep the family together. I see this a lot. Most couples become housemates. Yeah, I've seen that definitely in other, Asian ethnicities too, where even the husband might be like blatantly cheating and everybody knows he has a mistress or whatever, but the wife just sticks along with him, because she doesn't want to rock the boat and he's the one that made all the money and stuff. So, but I'm starting to see more and more Asian people, going for divorce though. So I don't know, maybe in another generation, then the divorce statistics might be pretty much the same, at least for Asian Americans, just based on what I've seen. Yeah. So I think more and more women are not willing to put up with that kind of crap anymore, especially when they have their own jobs and their own their own money. They're not as willing. But I think in my mom's generation, definitely from what I heard, of other family friends and stuff, that back then when the women didn't have their own money, they just had to put up with it.
Yeah, and it's not only in the Philippines and in Asian American, it's everywhere. I actually have a friend now who's talking about her friend who's been with her husband. He stays upstairs, she stays downstairs, and because he was making most of the money, and they have a child together, so they're pretty much housemates. And money, divorce costs money, so it really sometimes that is what drives it. Is I don't want to get divorced because then I'm going to have to split my 401k. I have to split all this other stuff. So we may as well just stay together and be housemates and be miserable because it's going to cost my 401k or whatever.
Yeah, or they can't stay in the nice big fancy house, both of them are going to end up having to stay in an apartment or a townhome because, it's a lot more expensive to support two households. Yeah. Yeah, so that's sad. But so see, oftentimes, divorce can be a happy occasion once you get out of it and, you move back on your feet. It doesn't mean that you have to be financially devastated for life, as we both found out, right?
Yeah, certainly the peace that comes with it. That's it, the peace of mind.
Keep hope alive. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So Khalid says, thank you. I'm making close to 7 with my business, but I understand. Okay.
Yeah, that's what he was asking about the 6-figure. Yeah, that's what he was asking about the figure. I guess he's making seven figures.
Are you making seven figures or 70,000 or what? Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then, hey, discourse motion, contingent liability. Okay. I'm not sure. Maybe that was something we were covering a while back because I'm not keeping up with the comments fast enough. Yeah. So, yeah. So any other tips that you would like to share out there, Dr. Sev? Tips in a nutshell for people going through divorce or trying to heal themselves after a divorce?
Yeah, I always take advantage of a network of people, whether it's a pastor, a personal finance, financial coach, personal financial planner, whoever, because divorce is already comes with its own set of emotions, its own set um, of trauma. If it's, especially if it's something where you've been injured because of somebody else, and so you're already dealing with the betrayal, you're dealing with the hurt and all of that, so you don't want to make any financial decisions at that time. You really want to talk with somebody who can help you really strategize around whatever decisions you need to make. And so you want to seek out those counsel. And another thing too is, especially in light of COVID and everything that's going on, this is not quite related to divorce, but if you are in a position right now where you're divorced or in newly divorced or divorced, and you now have to figure out, how am I going to make my money stretch? Two things I want to tell, well, more than two. The first thing I want to tell you is, don't pay that mortgage. And here is why. You can go ahead and negotiate with a mortgage, with somebody in a mortgage company, where you can say, let me add that money to the back. So if you have only a little bit of money, you have to figure out, what do I need to put that money towards? And mortgage is not a priority. I know you need to have a house over your head, but the mortgage is not a priority because you can negotiate. You can say, I want to put those payments to the back. I'm going through a little hardship right now. Here is my plan, and I want to put those in the back. If that doesn't work, you can always rent a place. You can always stay with somebody. You have other options for a house. The thing you don't want to not pay is your car, because you're going to need that for your kids. You're going to need that for your job, to go to your job. That's the one you really want to pay. Anything related to maybe a court case, those kind of debts you want to pay first, because those take priority. Credit card company, let them do whatever, let them sue you, let them do whatever they want. Because what we tend to do is, the one that's pushing the most and causing us angst, that's the one we want to pay. But the credit card company and the bill collectors, they can wait, because what are they going to do? They can't take your things. All they can do is take you to court, and you want to try to work with them. You don't want to ignore them. When I say ignore, not in terms of not ignoring their summons, but you want to ignore the payment. You don't want to make those payments. You want to try to work with them to come up with an agreement. And if they take you to court, don't hide. Go to court, because they can get a judgment against you if you're not in court. So one of the most important things to do is to pay your car note, because you don't want them to take your car. But the house, you can always make some kind of arrangement on the house. And again, those regular debtors, maybe utilities, work with the utility company. They sometimes will add on, the utility will stretch it out and give you a break. But the ones that are paramount is like your car note, any utilities, and any judgments that's against you. Everybody else can take the back seat, and you want to pay them, but don't pay the small things to get those people off your back. Meanwhile, the things that are really relevant, like a car, that will get you to work, because if you can't get to work, you lose your job, then you're further in a financial bind. So that's the thing you want to focus on first, and then any court cases against you, because then it can garnish your wage. So you don't want to get to that place where they will end up garnishing your wage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's nothing. It depends on the state. Yeah, definitely. There are some states where the judgment creditor can certainly garnish your wages. And it's always like a big shock when people receive that. They're like, what? I didn't even know about the case, or, I forgot about it or something. But But in North Carolina, the creditors are not allowed to garnish people's wages. So that's kind of one nice thing in North Carolina to help poor people, I guess. But with a lot of creditors, though, you are able to work out some sort of settlement plan or payment plan or something like that. So there's nothing wrong with being proactive. If you feel like you're already falling behind, to try to work out a payment plan with whoever your creditors are. It depends who it is, or, what kind of company it is. But many times they are willing to settle for less or stretch it out or something.
Yeah, and beware of those that are buying your debt
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
trying to come after you. I had one person call me about 200 and something that I supposedly owed from some surgery back in I don't know when, and he was calling me from New York, and I said, who are you and what is this for? And he told me, and I said, I don't know anything about that. Send me documentation. And he's like, can I have your email? I said, no, send me the information to the address on record. And he sent me a letter, and I sent him back a letter, certified mail. I do not know this. First of all, I do not know this debt. Tell me how you are qualified to collect debt in Georgia when you are in New York. What qualifies you? And send me proof that this is my debt. And I haven't heard back from him. So collectors buy debt. They tend to buy debt in a bulk. And if they have no way to prove, I'm not talking the original creditor, these are collectors. If they have no way to prove that it's your debt, then first of all, you don't have to pay it. They have to prove that it's your debt. But if they take you to court, don't ignore it. Because again, for the most part, if they get a judgment against you, it might not be that they can, depending on the state or whatever, as Judy said, they might not be able to garnish your wage, but they have a legal document that says you owe this now, a court document. And that no, you can't get away from that because you ignore the summons to go to court or you ignore their letter. So never ever ignore the collector's letter. You send them back a letter and make them prove that it's your debt. And if they can't prove that, then you don't have to pay it.
Yeah, keep a copy of everything, all correspondence. Yeah, and also with the default judgments, because a lot of these like creditors, they just hire the same like law firms that are run like mills, and they'll just go after everybody, even if they don't have any real proof of the underlying alleged debt. And then they hope that they will just get a default judgment against a lot of people, and then shake them down for money and stuff. Yeah, because once a judgment is entered, at least in North Carolina, then the interest also starts, even more interest starts accruing on that judgment, which is 8% a year in North Carolina. So that's why you definitely don't want to ignore debts to the point where you already get a judgment against you and it's just going to just keep ballooning up higher and higher. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, just looking at this stuff in the chat box. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. How does criminal conversion or criminal conversation? Yeah, so I've handled some of those types of cases, the alienation of affections and criminal conversation type cases where you're suing the person that had the affair with your spouse for busting up your marriage. And most of the time, those cases are just filed as a way to shake down the spouse for more settlement money in the divorce negotiations. But I've definitely had or seen some trials, like attorney friend of mine handled a case where he was able to get I don't know, maybe about $50,000 in a jury verdict against the ex-husband's girlfriend for ruining her marriage. Yeah. But you often have to check and see, is it going to be worth it to sue? Because, I don't know any attorneys that would do those types of cases on a pure contingency fee basis. So you're going to have to pay money up front to sue the person. And then you definitely want to see, does that person have assets or is it worth it to sue the person? Because if the person's broke, then what are you going to do? Just get a paper judgment that you'll never be able to collect on? Yeah. And it's also embarrassing, because in the court documents, the court pleadings, you basically have to allege these things and it becomes public record. And, then your whole like marital problems and your sex life and everything is going to be played out in front of the jury if it even goes to a jury.
I can't imagine suing someone, not my spouse, but the person who the spouse was with. Because, it's not their fault, it's his or hers. They were
Yeah.
the one that made a commitment
Yeah.
and went outside of that commitment.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So,
so that's why a lot of states don't have that as a cause of action, but it does exist as a cause of action here in North Carolina. So, once in a blue moon, there are cases that I know about or that I have sort of gotten involved in that deal with those types of cases. But a lot of times it either settles or, it's just a way to try to get more money out of the divorce settlement with the soon to be former spouse. So that let's say, the angry wife says, well, if you settle this and give me all this money, then I'll also drop that suit against your girlfriend.
oh,
So
Lord.
it's used as a
Too much
negotiation.
stress.
Yeah, negotiation tactic. Yeah. And then Kayak says divorce is tough because you feel like, yeah, that's the way most people feel, because a lot of times people have been saving for retirement, thinking like, well, this is all the money we have for retirement. But then the other spouse suddenly says, well, I'm sick and tired of you. I'm leaving you. I want a divorce. And then they're like, oh, well, then that means that I'm going to have half as much for retirement. And I was hoping that we would have like a comfortable retirement. So it is, financially devastating for most people, unless you make great money. And even people with a lot of money still feel screwed over a lot
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
get divorced. Yeah. So it is also definitely, you have to consider the financial ramifications of divorcing. And this question, unity of legal, I'm not really sure what that means, unfortunately. Dr. Sev, have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So, okay, not worth it. Yep. Yep. I mean, sometimes it's not even worth it to sue people if they're a bunch of deadbeats or have no assets to a name anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Christy. Thanks for being here. And hi, Debbie. Thank you for being here. I did want to mention a couple of things, though, that some people don't realize. And recently I was telling another person about this, that even if you get divorced, this applies especially for like stay-at-home moms or people that were stay-at-home parents or whatever. If you made a lot less money than your spouse, then you might be able to collect Social Security benefits based on your former spouse's earnings. So the website, it's on the official ssa.gov.
Yeah, you have to have been married. I think
10
it's
years.
up to 14 years or something like that. I
Or
can't
at
remember.
least, at least
Is it
10 years.
10 years? Okay.
Yeah. So I'll flash this on the screen, but if you just Google Social Security benefits divorced or divorce, then you should be able to find this website on ssa.gov. And it talks about how if you've been married for at least 10 years and you still haven't remarried, and your own Social Security benefits would be less than half of what your former spouse's benefits are, then you would be able to get the benefits at a higher rate based on your former spouse's Social Security. And this doesn't decrease the amount of Social Security benefits that the former spouse gets either. So this is where.
Yeah, I remember that one because he made much less than me. So I remember.
Oh, okay. So
And I
he's
think
the one that
we were married
benefits
for
from this
14.
law.
I
Yeah.
think that's why 14 stuck in my mind, because I think at the time we were married 14 years. So I was like, okay, so I guess he's gonna get some benefits from my Social Security.
Yeah. Yeah. But at least it doesn't decrease the amount that the higher earning spouse gets. Yeah. So anyway, just thought I would make that public service announcement that if you look up ssa.gov or Google Social Security divorced spouse, you can find out about potential benefits that you might get if you were the one that made a lot less money compared to your former spouse. Of course, you have to have been married for at least 10 years and not remarry. Yeah. So, and then another thing that I thought would be interesting to show. We always say that the first step, if you want to get your finances in order, is to have a budget or know what your monthly budget is. So this is a form that's required in Wake County divorce cases where people are trying to get alimony or spousal support, but it is a really good form that people can just find if they Google like Wake County financial affidavit. And it's also a similar form is also used in other counties like in Durham. And I'm sure there are plenty of other states that use this kind of form too. And it basically is this financial affidavit form. Yeah, I hope it showed up for everybody. Oops, maybe not. Just trying
It
to
showed up
find
for a bit.
Yeah, let me try to find this. It's called a financial affidavit, and it's about 6 pages long. And it's really good for budgeting because somebody else who made up this form already came up with all the categories of what normal people spend. And so, in this form, you would have to write in, what your gross income is, your monthly take home is, what your deductions are from your paycheck. And this is all supposed to be done on a monthly basis. And then this is where it says like regular recurring monthly expenses. And it says all this stuff here, rent or mortgage payment, renters, homeowners insurance, taxes, not included in your mortgage, house repair, appliance repair, electricity, gas, water, garbage, cable, telephone, internet, yard maintenance, home security, pest control, house cleaning, automobile payment. There's just like so many expenses that any normal person just living life, would have to pay every month. So this form just really breaks it down to the nitty gritty. It even separates it out into how much, if you have children involved, how much you would pay every month for your kids' expenses, medical premiums, drug costs, eating out, school lunches, personal upkeep, like getting haircuts, dry cleaning, babysitting, extracurricular church donations, So I just feel like, a form like this is really helpful, even if you're not actually litigating any sort of case, but it's good for building a budget and getting an idea of how much money you're really spending every month. Because oftentimes, people don't really know. They just like keep taking money out of their account or charging up their credit cards without even knowing what their budget should be. Right, Dr. Sev?
Yeah, exactly. I had to actually fill out a form like that because we ended up going to um, mediation.
Mhm.
And so I had to fill out a form like similar to this with all of the expenses and all of that I did because he was asking for alimony of 1,500 a month or something like that. He was asking for.
Oh, he was asking you for 1,500 a month?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Wow, I can't
Yeah,
believe
because
it. The
I
nerve
made
of
a
him,
lot
huh?
more. I didn't made a lot more than he did. So he's
Yeah.
asking for that, and of course, a few people called him some names because they're like,
And
why
you
would you
probably
ask a
called
woman
him
to
some
do
names.
that? A woman to support you. But yeah, I had to fill out that to show that I didn't have 1,500 to give him.
Yeah, because in litigation cases, both the spouses are supposed to fill out this financial affidavit form, and then the attorneys can nitpick it and say that you're exaggerating or you're lying or your credit card bills don't really support your allegations that you spend so much on food and groceries or whatever, and then the judge takes a look at it with a fine-tooth comb too, because sometimes people don't mean to exaggerate, like they're not trying to pull one over the judge or anything, but they
Yeah,
just seriously don't realize how little or how much they're really spending on gas costs or groceries or whatever, how much they pay for their utilities. So yeah, I mean, there are definitely forms like this available online that can give people a good idea of how they should manage their finances after they're getting divorced or separating, so they can figure out, okay, what do I really need to cut out on in order
yeah.
to not go into debt.
And they shouldn't even wait till then. I mean, it's just good practice
Mhm.
overall because with everything that's going on with COVID and that, you never know if you lose your job or if you lose a part of your income. So it helps to know how much it takes to run your household, and then if something you want to know the several numbers. How much does it take to run my household now? If I were to lose my job, what is the bare bones that it would take to run my household if I lost my job? What can I cut back? So this is a just good practice to know, how much money it's going to
Mhm.
take. And then that can help you to drive what kind of jobs you take after divorce. Maybe you weren't working before, but you can say, okay, I know I need to bring in at least 2,000 a month to cover the bare bones. And if I want to buy steak instead of sardines, then I need to bring in 2,500 a month or something. But it's good to know the bottom number and then a nice comfortable number that it takes to run your house.
Hmm. Yeah. And then, just to kind of be more optimistic for people going through divorce, just think of it as being a temporary situation. There are some things that you could do to really save money if you're in a financial bind, like moving in back in with your parents or with a sibling
Hmm.
or a
Yeah.
good friend, renting a room. Obviously it depends on whether you have like little kids that have to move with you or whatever. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people who ended up having to just temporarily stay with friends or relatives just to get back on their feet, and they didn't know if they're going to rent another place, or they didn't have the money yet. So you kind of have to do what you need to do to make sure you don't just charge up your credit cards like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I started making more money after my divorce than anything.
Oh,
But what I
good.
decided to do, I decided to downgrade.
Mhm.
So after having walked away from the house, I'm renting a nice townhouse in a place that, oh, maybe like a middle class neighborhood or lower middle class neighborhood. And people are like, oh, why would you do that? Because you're making so much money. You're making six figures. Well, it didn't matter that I was making six figures because I had a plan. I knew that I wanted to, first of all, get rid of debt. And I knew that I was not ready to buy a house yet. And I did not want to be paying what I was paying for my mortgage. So I found a place that was comfortable where my daughter would be comfortable. And it was still, it was still good. So I was paying 75% of what I was paying for my mortgage. So you do what you need to do to recover and not get caught up in what society says you should do this. And at 50, you're supposed to be doing this. And at 40, you're supposed to be doing this. And you're supposed to have that. Well, it's about you and what it is that you can afford and where you are in life and what you value right now. Do you value peace of mind? Do you value, do you want the collectors to be calling you all the time? So you want to stay where you were staying when you were married. So now maybe you want to downsize. So whatever makes you comfortable and gives you peace of mind, that's what you want to do. Forget about society. Forget about what your family says. Forget about, because they're not paying your bills. Okay.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of turmoil, not only emotionally, but also financially. And then your relationships with people can also change. Like if certain friends support your ex and you feel like you don't really want to be in touch with your ex's friends anymore or whatever, it's just like a really tough time in most people's lives to get divorced, but you will get over it. If you're smart financially, you can get back on your feet again within like a year or just a few years or something. Like it doesn't have to ruin your whole life. So, and then Discourse Motion is asking, what if the husband has ongoing child support payments from a previous relationship and he and his now wife have joint income? Well,
I can speak to that because I was in that position.
oh, okay. So what happened with you?
Well, he had to pay the child support out of his money.
Yeah.
Of course, it impacted what he could contribute to the house,
Mhm.
but that was his responsibility. And if he fell behind, he actually fell behind at some point. And I encouraged him to go talk to the court and say, hey, your income was decreased, and they were trying to. I think, if I remember correctly, at the time they were looking at both of our income to determine how much he could pay. And I'm like, I did not have anything to do with this child. So why are you looking at? But that's the requirement. That's how Georgia looked at it at the time. They looked at both our income and they said, well, this is what he should be paying in child support. So of course, since it came out of his paycheck on his job, he could not contribute as much to the house. So that's what happened in my situation.
Hmm. Yeah, yet another financial consideration before you marry someone is, do they have other kids out there that they're responsible for, and how's that going to affect you? Because a lot of times women do get annoyed, when they have their own kids with their spouse, but yet, baby mama out there is still demanding more money, or the other kid from the previous relationship or marriage, is demanding money and stuff. So it can just really make your life more complicated if you go into a relationship with someone that already has a kid or or multiple children. Yeah. But at least here in North Carolina, the new spouse's income is not used to calculate child support. The child support is just based on the actual parents of the child's incomes.
That's
So
good.
yeah, but that's the way it is in North Carolina. I don't know what it's like in other places. Yeah, but it definitely makes life a little bit tougher when there are children involved, from prior relationships. Yeah, but let's see. So I did. Yeah, I mentioned the form. It's called the Wake County. DOM stands for like domestic court, and it's called a financial affidavit. But if you just Google that, it's a lot faster to find it than searching all over nccourts.org for different, Wake County local rules, local forms, Yeah. So, yeah. But so in terms of divorce, though, just to end also on a high note, like I should have mentioned this earlier. If people really want to save money when they're going through divorce, they really should either go through a mediator or try collaborative divorce, which is another way to try to resolve things outside the courtroom without having to file a lawsuit against each other. Yeah, because a lot of times people spend well over $10,000 or even over $50,000 hiring attorneys, fighting over every single thing, and it's just gets really ugly and stressful for everybody involved, especially if you have children involved. You don't want to be involved with this god awful court litigation that lasts you a year and a half before you finally get resolution, or even 2 years. Yeah.
And
So,
he had a pro bono lawyer, so of
oh,
course I ended up having to pay for a lawyer. So, and I'm like,
oh my gosh.
we still ended up doing the same thing that I suggested when I drew up the documents on my own. But,
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, so whatever happened to him later? Did he find a job?
I have no clue what he's
Really?
doing.
Oh, okay. So
No
you're not
idea.
even in touch then.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to move from Georgia, first of all. He's supposed to stay in Georgia until my daughter was I think it was like 18 or something like that. And he moved to New York without me knowing. And just a mess,
Oh,
just a mess. But
oh,
no, my daughter and I are fine. I mean, I do encourage her to talk to him, and she does call him, and he calls her. But which is fine. That's what they need to do. I don't need to talk to him.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you got back on your feet again, and you're talking about finances and trying to teach other people so that they don't get in the same situation. So it kind of goes back to what I mentioned before. If you start seeing red flags in somebody early on in the relationship, then
Yeah,
it's probably your intuition telling
yeah,
you, caution, do not get married to this type of person. Yeah. Because I've been involved in so many divorce cases where, if it's the woman that makes more money, they're usually very mad when they have to give the man money from their 401k or give alimony, and they just feel like they got screwed over. And
yeah.
it's
I
like,
had to pay
okay,
alimony.
yeah,
But only for 2 years though.
okay, that's
Yeah.
not too bad, I guess. I mean, it could have been longer. Yeah. Yeah, you definitely wanna be sure that you're on the right page, on the same page with the person that you're dating, in terms of finance and career outlook and what you plan on focusing on. Like, is one person gonna slow down their career, or retire early, or the other person gonna stay home with kids? There's just like so much that needs to be brought to the forefront, before people even tie the knot and then get financially all intertwined. And, you could really get ruined if the person is a mess financially. So, yeah.
And I think for the most part, people have good intentions, but unfortunately there are a few out there that they are predator to prey, and they are looking for, whether it's a woman or a man, looking for a man who's making more money that they can prey on, or a man who's looking for a woman who's making more money that they can prey on. So it's
Mhm.
not we're not trying to say that everybody's going to divorce, or people who are divorcing are bad, but there are those few, and that's why you have to protect yourself. And it's not because you think everybody is a predator, but you never know who is. So you
Oh,
got to
yeah.
protect yourself.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And that's why, especially if you're older in age or it's not your first marriage or there's a big disparity in income or whatever, then you do really want to seriously consider getting a prenup. Yeah. So, oh, marriage should
I'm
be
too
based.
old to get married again, but
What did you say? Would
but if
you?
I ever did a prenup, he's going to be getting a background check, a credit card check,
Yeah.
and a prenup.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, everybody, be logical, right? Don't be swept away by love. She's saying you sound like my mom. Yeah, yeah, you just don't want to be financially ruined by picking the wrong person. Anyone with like gambling addiction or drug addiction,
Mm,
yeah,
yeah,
already filed for
never know.
bankruptcy. Yeah, yeah,
Never
can't
know.
hold down a job, lied to you about whether they have a college degree or
Mm,
got kicked out of the military. I'm just,
it's so many things. I mean, and again, that's what it, somebody said logic. That's really what it comes down to. It's yes, you love, yeah, you're loving this person, but you have to think about the logical part of it. And again, it's about protecting your inheritance for your kids. Um,
Mhm,
it just makes sense. It just makes sense to put protections in place to make sure that you are not financially devastated at the end of this divorce.
mhm.
And you're not trying to make the other person be financially devastated either. But if you don't bring anything into the marriage, why are you expecting half of everything? Come on now.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, some people feel entitled like that, like, hey, we got married and now I'm getting half of your 401k now, after I squandered away all my money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and on that note, I mean, this is just based on what I've seen as a divorce attorney. If things are already starting to go south, then really, people should end the marriage sooner than later because the longer you
Yes.
keep sticking in a marriage with someone that's like a parasite,
Hmm.
for lack of a better word, like a scrub. Yeah. Somebody that's a parasite, like the longer you stayed married to them, the more likely you're going to have to pay them alimony because
Yeah.
at least in our courts, it will be seen that you are the supporting spouse. The other person has
Hmm.
been substantially dependent on you, to
Yes.
maintain their standard of living. And that's just the way it was, like he can't help it that he's depressed and he can't keep a job, I mean, he's your
Mhm.
husband. So you have to pay him some alimony,
Yes.
So, or,
Yeah.
she always made more money than he did. And now he can't maintain the same standard of living. And they've been married for, 20 years. So therefore he deserves alimony, so, nip it in the bud if it's already
Yes.
feeling
And
like,
don't be concerned about your kids because they will survive. Because I did that. I stayed because I'm like, I don't want my daughter to see divorce. And that was the wrong attitude, the wrong approach. Because it would have been better for me to show her a healthy relationship.
mhm,
And the healthy relationship may have been the two of us not being together. But you live and you learn. And my job is to help as many women as I can,
mhm,
you know, help them set up their finances prior to marriage, or if they're going through divorce, help them get their finances back together because
mhm,
I've been there. And if I was able to do it, then I know that if you can put a plan in place, we can get it done. So
mhm. Yeah, that's right. How does the best interest of the children ethos play into equalization of that? Oh, well, not, yeah, it's totally separate because at least in North Carolina, you have an equitable distribution claim to split up the properties and debts, the financial issues, and then the child custody is a totally different hearing.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's not all
that's
heard
right.
at once, at least where I am. Yeah,
Yeah,
but of
it
course,
was
if
in
you
Georgia too. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So the kid stuff doesn't really weigh into, splitting up the properties. Normally the property or the debts and marital assets are usually split 50-50, and then the kids, that's a total do as well as child support. Yeah. But but Dr. Sev, getting back to what you said about, getting help and getting a financial coach and stuff. I mean, for those people out there listening who might not have the money, to hire attorneys or get financial coaches and stuff, there are plenty of places where you can get free help, though. At least where I am, we have Legal Aid of North Carolina, which has multiple offices throughout the whole state, and there are other legal service nonprofits.
yeah.
where attorneys, even if they can't represent the person individually, they tend to give maybe group seminars to teach
Yeah.
people how to file it themselves, or they
Yeah,
have
and
the
some of the
template.
courts too, you can get free financial, you can get resources to get free financial help through some of the courts.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm assuming, some churches do offer these free financial courses or, some sort of counseling for people going through divorce.
Yes.
Yeah. And there are definitely, Facebook support groups, meetups for people going through divorce also where you might be able to get help, but, usually it's better to get professional help than just, meeting up with a bunch of other people getting divorced too, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. Well, Dr. Sev, if people are interested in talking with you more about financial coaching, how would they reach you? You want to?
They can actually go to my website, which is Sev Talks Money, just like it shows on my nameplate there.com. If they go there, they can actually make an appointment through the Work With Me tab. So it's
Okay.
www.sev Talks Money, and they can work with me there. And all the links to my other social media and all that is the website is being revamped. So, and I think right now the social media links are updated, but I'm not sure. I'll try to go check tonight to see if they updated it. But the website is being revamped. But the Work With Me tab is live,
Mhm.
and you can make an appointment, get on my calendar, and we can talk about your finances.
Okay. And you're not limited to just people locally in Georgia, right?
No, no.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for being on the show. We lasted over an hour. There's just so many issues to talk about when we're
I
talking
know we could go for a long time.
about, yeah, talk more about our terrible experiences or our
Yeah.
friends and families' terrible experiences and stuff.
Yeah,
But
and
we all survived, It's
yes,
okay.
and if we did, then the message here is there is hope. There is hope.
Yeah.
All you just put a plan in place. Don't make any decisions in the heat of the moment. Take a step back and really weigh the situation or get counseling, because there are lots of free resources around that you can get counseling, and then while you're doing that, you can kind of consider your options, because sometimes divorce is the best thing. To be honest with you, sometimes divorce is the best thing for whatever situation you're in. And sometimes divorce can, you can work around divorce and not get divorced, depending on the situation, you can work through that. But sometimes it what you need to do.
Mhm. Okay, great. Okay. Well, hopefully people will check out your website as well as your YouTube channel, Dr. Severine Bryan. And thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your experiences and your knowledge with everyone today.
Thank you for having
Okay,
me on.
great. Okay, have a great week, and I'll see you
All
soon
right.
on YouTube.
All right. Same here. Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.